Synaptics, okay. Synaptics. Okay. People at home, can you hear me? Those at home, I need a check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, good. So let's go back and share that again. All right. Oh, okay. Thank you. Where did we go here? How are we all doing? Huh? Uh-oh. Oh. No, they're not. But I have some great pills at home. Okay. Well, yeah, you can't drive when you take them, so. Nope. I'm meeting the roofer Tuesday. Hmm? Yes, it got tarped fine. We were number 34,612 in the queue, which goes out to at least 55,000. So it took a while. Once we get that done, we can get the ceiling fixed. Oh my God. Yeah.
So I'm also a professor and I'm looking for pen, and I just wanted to check. Do we have to bring up? Do we have a nice tech setup in here, like we use this computer to project and everything?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's literally
So I mean, I use this to simulcast on Zoom. Yeah. So you're coming in here at 10?
Yes, like the hurricane happened, and well, basically first it was the COVID peak, and they had this upstairs. Hurricane happened, and it dispersed everything. I'm trying to get back. So like,
okay.
human being contact.
Right. Well,
So I'll be-
okay. I will come a little later because I've been coming about 10:15 or 10:45 rather to get set up. But-
Whatever.
Okay. Jerry,
Right, nice to meet you.
this is biology.
Uh,
My wife loved that class. Yeah. No, that was a long time ago. Okay. All righty. Well, so in case you didn't catch that, we will be having a class that will be meeting in here at 10, starting next week. So I will be setting up a little closer to 11. So I've been coming in about 10:15, getting everything together, but I'll be coming in about 10 till now. And so it'll be okay. All right, so some words for those in lab. Remember that the deadline for turning your labs in is 2 weeks after you got the data, which for those of you who are here Wednesday, means that the deadline for turning in the community lab was Wednesday. For those of you who are coming today, that today is the deadline for turning in your community lab. Please get them in. I don't have deadlines for no reason at all. Okay, we have been very, understanding of how things have gone, but we really need to get back on schedule. So turn it in. So today we will ask, just as we asked with competition, how evolution affects exploitative relationships. So in competition, we looked at competition in nature, we developed some models to describe it, and then we asked, how does evolution affect our understanding? And we used the models to sort of make that visible. And we're going to do the same thing for exploitation. On Monday, we looked at exploitation in nature. We then developed our models. Now we're going to ask, what's going on with evolution? Okay. So basically, what we're going to do is, we'll minimize this. We don't need this. And there. What we're going to do is kind of standardize our prey isocline on the MacArthur Rosenzweig pumped isocline that allows the prey to have density dependent growth so that they do compete as they get closer to the carrying capacity. For the predator isocline, sort of, it doesn't matter right now whether we're talking about a strictly density dependent predator, which is what we're graphing here. So here there is a density of prey, right? And it's not ratio dependent and it's not saturating. This just makes it cleaner and easier to talk about. You have to realize that when we talk about that predator isocline, it doesn't matter if it's sloped, if it's straight up and down, or if it saturates. What we're going to talk about is it moving back and forth on the x-axis. Okay, and that will be the same thing, regardless of what shape that isocline actually is. So our question then is, if we have, let's say it's a stable interaction here. If we have a stable interaction, how will predators competing among themselves alter this interaction? So remember what we mean when we talk about competition. We mean that some individuals among the predators will have higher fitness than others. Okay, so who are the guys that are going to have the highest fitness among the predators? Well, they're going to be the ones that are most efficient at catching prey. So if we think about, say, coyotes and rabbits as a predator-prey system, and we talk about which coyotes will leave the most offspring, it's the coyotes that are the cleverest, the fastest, the ones that can catch the most rabbits. Well, now that has importance, because if the rabbit density is low, the ones that are most skilled at catching rabbits are still going to survive and reproduce. But the ones that are less skilled are going to starve. So natural selection will push predators to become more and more efficient at catching their prey. What does that look like on a graph like this? Well, this is what it looks like. It means that the predator isocline shifts to the left, so that the area in which the predator population can grow gets to be intersect a smaller and smaller prey population. Really highly efficient predators can still reproduce if there's a low prey population right there. Okay, and of course that's because they are better at catching prey, and the ones that are not so good have died off. And I see Kelsey at home has a question. Do you want to unmute or do you want to type? Let's see. Yes, no? Kelsey, you did raise your hand, right? Maybe that was a mistake. Well, if you want to ask, speak up. Otherwise, we'll just move on. Okay. So the basic situation here is that when predators compete, the ones that are most efficient have the advantage. They leave the most offspring. And that means that the predator population as a whole will get gradually more efficient at killing their prey. That's going to mean that they can survive at smaller densities of prey. And what that means is that this line here will move from right to left. Now notice that we've got a stable equilibrium here, and we no longer have a stable equilibrium. This is now an unstable equilibrium. Natural selection on the predator for increased efficiency destabilizes this relationship. If predators get really efficient at catching and killing their prey, they are more likely to drive them extinct. So over time, we have a stable predator-prey interaction that has become unstable due to evolution among the predators. So here's the question. We see lots of predator-prey systems out there, and they're not driving the prey extinct. Why not? Why aren't they driving the prey extinct? Oh, and I gotta get my advance here. Come on, there it is. Okay. Well, there's matching and countervailing selection on the prey at the same time. Because ask yourself, when predators get more efficient at catching prey, who are they catching? The slow and stupid ones. And that eliminates the slow and stupid alleles from the prey, meaning that the prey becomes smarter and faster. And so even though competition among the predator tends to push the isocline to the left, the prey evolution pushes it right back. And so if the predator pressure on the prey is about equal to the rate at which the prey balance out any advantages that the predators have, then this interaction, in fact, won't change. If selective pressures are about equal on predators and prey, then you'll have a stable interaction. And in fact, the predators won't cause the extinction of their prey, because the more they eat the slow and stupid ones, the faster and smarter the ones that are left are. And that's what the prey population will look like in the next generation. So even if predators do become more efficient, their prey get better at escaping them at the same time. So what we have then is a arms race. That's how we think of it. It's an evolutionary arms race, and predators and prey are mutually selecting each other's traits in this sort of dance that they go through in evolutionary time. And this concept was articulated first by Lee Van Valen at the University of Chicago in 1965, and he called it very cleverly the Red Queen, because he had young children and he was reading them Lewis Carroll books. Okay, and to understand what the reference is, you have to understand what Alice says to the Red Queen and what the Red Queen says to Alice in Through the Looking Glass. So in Through the Looking Glass, Alice tells the Queen, in my country, we must run very fast to get anywhere. And the Red Queen replies, well, in Wonderland, we must run very fast to stay in the same place. And the illusion here is that both predators and prey are running as fast as they possibly can, evolving these traits, and by doing so, they stay in the same place. They confer stability on their interaction. If the prey fall behind the rate of evolution of the predator, then the predator will gradually get more efficient and put them at risk of extinction. If the predator fails to keep up with the rate of evolution in the prey will get so good at evading the predator that the predator will go extinct. Yes. Okay, so Dwayne's question is the Red Queen applies to many kinds of interactions. What is a parasite? It's an exploiter. That's exactly what we're talking about today. So, and when we talk about the Red Queen in terms of parasites in Bio 2014, we are talking about this. We're talking about exactly what we're talking about today. We're diagramming an interaction that we kind of typically refer to as a predator-prey system, but it's parasites and hosts, it's parasitoids and hosts, it's any exploitative interaction, not just lions and zebras. It's AIDS and humans, it's tapeworms and dogs, whatever. This is always the exploiter, and this is always the host or the prey. So the Red Queen then is a central organizing idea in all of evolutionary biology, and we can show its operation in ecological time very easily. We've seen it many, many times, and we will talk about it in more detail when we talk about parasites in a future lecture. Right now, let's just talk about the consequences of pressures on the predator moving their isocline to the left and pressures on the prey trying to move that isocline back to the right. So there are a couple of things that arise from this, and some of them are kind of surprising. So the first one is called the paradox of enrichment. Okay, and this is something that we kind of stumbled onto by accident because we were stupid and we did something that we shouldn't have. And again, I blame the British for this because they're the ones that did the stupidest things and gave us the most definitive demonstration of the paradox of enrichment. But here we have a prey population, okay? And notice that the curve, this is just a regular curve, right? And we haven't diagrammed a predator for this interaction yet. So let's ask what happens if resources increase for the prey. Well, clearly, if resources increase for the prey, then they'll be able to have a higher carrying capacity, right? And their isocline will change. Instead of looking like this one, it will look more like this. They will reach a new carrying capacity, which is much higher if they have more resources. So how might we have stumbled onto this? Well, logically, this has to happen, right? But in terms of the real world, when we provide fodder for deer in the winter, because we like to hunt deer, they have higher populations. We enhanced their population density by providing extra resources. And so we have shown repeatedly that you can actually do this in nature. So the question is, what is the effect of this on a predator-prey system? Okay, well, let's imagine there is a predator. Let's imagine it's a density-dependent predator with a straight up and down isocline rather than a ratio-dependent predator. And here's the initial interaction, okay, before we do anything to help the prey. So we have a stable equilibrium here between predator and prey. Any combination of points around this equilibrium will spiral into stability. And unless you move the combination of predators and prey way the heck out here, it's going to be stable. But now look what's happened because we helped, quote unquote, the prey. We made life easier for the prey. We gave them more resources, and they were able to reach a new carrying capacity that's higher. But what did that do to the interaction between predator and prey? Well, not surprisingly, more prey means that there are more predators. And now look where the intersection is. For this density-dependent predator, you have an unstable interaction. So in helping, quote unquote, the prey, we've actually caused their extinction. We've seen this in a number of cases, dramatically on small islands off the coast of Britain. There have been, a number of other demonstrations. A few people finally kind of thought, maybe we ought to think about what we're doing before we actually go in and help the bunny rabbits or whatever the animal of the day is. So the paradox of enrichment refers to the fact that if there's an increase in resources for the prey, it can cause the destabilization of an otherwise stable predator-prey interaction. Okay, now think about, we got this from our own kind of blindly applied, well-meaning, but inept interactions with nature. But don't prey evolve to be more efficient at their resource use also? So it's possible for prey to become more efficient at using their resources to change their carrying capacity in the environment and destabilize a predator-prey interaction that way. Okay, we had previously talked about predators becoming more efficient. Basically, in nature, if you are efficient, you are in danger of extinction, whether you're a predator or prey, for varying reasons. Now, this is a density-dependent predator. Okay, we've seen that this is not the only way that predators can interact with their prey, right? We altered the prey isocline in two ways, and we're using the MacArthur-Rosenzweig alteration here. We didn't bother with a a refuge, because that's not really helping us explain these concepts. But we also can modify the predator isocline. We can make it ratio dependent, or we can make it saturating so that it's limited by something else. Well, what does that do? If you have a ratio dependent predator-prey system, then enrichment of the prey will not cause a loss of stability. You simply move to an equilibrium between predator and prey that is again stable, but has higher numbers of prey as well as higher numbers of predators. So the key thing here is that if it's a ratio dependent system, there is no paradox of enrichment. The prey can become better at using their resources, they can increase their carrying capacity, and that won't destabilize anything. It's only these density dependent predators. Okay, and there are surprising numbers of density dependent predators out here. Humans often act as if they were density dependent rather than ratio dependent. So just keep that in mind. So this is ratio dependence, and we have continued stability when we have ratio dependence. Oops, hello. The other thing is, and I see that I gave you the brief exposition here. The other thing is that when predators, let me get that back. When predators saturate, there we go. When predator populations saturate and so that they are limited by something else, they also tend to be resistant to destabilization, because let's imagine a predator that's density dependent, and let's say its intercept is here. So a density dependent predator whose isocline starts here would go up, straight up, and then would turn. Well, okay, if it turned, then it would still intersect the prey on the right of the hump, and it would still be stable. The interesting thing is when you have a density dependent predator that might have its intersection over here and goes up and then turns. Well, okay, so it could intersect here. And then if it turns here, it could intersect here, it could intersect here. Well, some of these intersections would be stable and some would not. Basically, if you got a ratio dependent predator, you're pretty much guaranteed stability. If you have a density dependent predator, you are in danger of generating instability. If you have a ratio dependent predator that saturates because something else limits it, again, stable. The key thing is ratio dependence. You have a density dependent predator that stabilizes because something else is limited. It could be stable, or it might be really complicated, depending on exactly where that predator isocline starts. If the predator isocline starts right here under the hump in the original population and then turns like this, well, then you'd change from a cycling interaction to one in which there's stability. If you have a density dependent predator that saturates, that starts here, you've got stability and you still have stability. But if you have one over here on the other side of the hump, well, this is unstable. If it goes up past the prey curve and then saturates, it's unstable. If it turns under the prey curve like this, goes straight up and then makes a hard right, then it would be stable. But if it goes up like this and then turns, Well, okay, then you have three equilibria. You have one here, you'd have a second here, you'd have a third here. This is stable, this is unstable, this is unstable. So we can envision and we can model very complex interactions with this combination of predator and prey isoplane characteristics. And we can also understand what the effect is of changing the efficiency of predators and changing the efficiency of prey. And a lot of times, ecologists use these graphical methods as kind of an exploratory way of envisioning what the results of a management decision might be. So they're not trying to make predictions of actual numbers. They would be looking to see whether they might be likely to help a population that they were hoping to help, or whether they would run a risk of inadvertently hurting it. And if they know something about the predator and the prey and how that interaction kind of looks on these graphs, then it's actually really easy to sort of make a trial graph and say, okay, if we were to increase the food for this animal this much, what would the likely effect be? Would we be running a risk of destabilizing something? Would we be helping both the predator and the prey? And so we don't often use these methods for quantitative predictions, but we do use them as kind of qualitative models just to help us get a grip on what might happen and guide our thinking about how we might proceed. So we had the question about parasites and the red queen. And it's really important to know that the red queen, the idea that predators and prey are locked in a never-ending battle that is mediated by evolution, is one of the strongest features generating diversity in all of evolution. We see it over and over and over again that parasitism and diseases and predation are drivers of diversification. So when you have a group of species that is very diverse, oftentimes you can trace the source of that diversity to escaping predators or parasites or diseases. And this is something that we will explore more when we talk about parasites. So we've kept up really well with our lectures this fall. Usually I'm still working through the predation graphs when I start this lecture, and so this is kind of tacked onto the end. But we have time to spare today because this is all I'm going to talk about today. So what I'd like to know is whether people have questions about exploitation in general, and we can review any of the graphs that we looked at this week or any of the topics. This would be a really good time to do that because exploitation has a lot of stuff going on, much more than competition. And it can be hard to keep track. So I will just open it up for questions that you might have before we set the stage for talking about parasites on Monday. Okay, the question is, we're going to need to know most of these graphs for the tests. Let me explain what I will expect of you. I will expect you to understand that basic Lotka-Volterra graph where you have simple crossed lines, right? Straight up and down and straight left and right. I'll expect you to understand the way that a combination of predator and prey populations will change over time, giving you the oscillation that we were looking for. I will expect you to be able to identify what those two changes to the prey isocline are. If I give you a graph and it has a hump in the prey isocline, I expect you to be able to tell me that that means it's density dependent. That means it's not the basic Lotka-Volterra model. It means that the prey are competing with one another. If it's got that kink in it, I expect you to be able to say, ah, that symbolizes a refuge. And remember that our initial predator isocline was straight up and down, density dependent. I expect you to know that if it slants, that it's ratio dependent, that there is a ratio between the number of predators and number of prey that is required for the predator population to grow. Dwayne. There is, yeah, in Lotka-Volterra, there is no competition among predators and there's no competition among prey. Go back and look at the assumptions that we wrote out when I gave you those equations for the basic Lotka-Volterra graph. They're really stupid, right? It's like the predators, they just die. There's nothing that affects them. They just keel over randomly. The only thing that determines how many predators there are is how many prey they can eat. Well, of course, we know that that's wrong, but you have those silly assumptions, and yet it got us pretty far towards describing real exploitative interactions. So yeah, be able to tell me when you have a curve to the predator isocline that something else is beginning to limit the predator other than the prey. If the predator isocline goes up and then turns flat, it means that increases in the density of prey have no effect on the predator anymore. That means something else has to be limiting. So understand what those four things are. Density dependence in the prey, a prey isocline, a prey refuge, what ratio dependence looks like and what it means, and what the saturation of a predator isocline would mean and what it would look like. So know what those four things are. The other thing is be able to tell me what happens to any combination of predator and prey on one of those graphs, which is why you have like, I think 15 graphs in the homework, like of various combinations. It's just all practice for that. And there's always a minimum of 4 areas on those graphs. If we go back to here, and I share that again. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. Okay, there's always these 4 areas, always, always, always. There can be extra areas, and that's kind of your challenge. When you see that there are extra areas because of the way that the predator isocline has intercepted, well, then you have to look carefully at how the populations would move. Okay, and I see we have some people at home who are asking something, and going on here? So Kelsey still has her hand up, and now Caden has his hand up.
Yeah, so in the graph where there's changing efficiency between the predators and the prey, is it gonna bounce back and forth, the predator isocline? And like in reality, does it bounce back and forth, or does it just kind of like find a spot and then kind of move slowly based on which organism develops better efficiency, and then it moves back as the other one becomes more efficient?
Okay, so Caden's asked an important question, which is,
Yeah.
does the
It should be one of
isocline
these. It's
for the
like on the
predator
end too. I think
actually
it's the last one maybe.
move back and
Yo,
forth?
Marina, how long you got to finish school, bro?
So does
What?
it move
How
to
long
the
till I
left
finish
when the
school?
predator?
Dr.
Yeah.
Howard, can you
Probably like
repeat
2
what
more
you're
years,
saying?
3
Because
more
someone
years.
is unmuted and we can't.
Okay, wait a minute. We've got some interference here on the home here.
That's a long time. They said when you said it, we out with bro, I'm leaving the family and all. Where they go, like,
Can somebody mute something? Let's everybody mute everything. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so what Caden is asking is whether the predator isocline actually moves this way as the predator becomes more efficient, only to then respond by moving back as the prey becomes more efficient. Or is it more static than that? It's actually more static than that, because remember, the selection on the prey is occurring simultaneously with the countervailing selection on the predator. Every time the predators kill a couple of stupid, slow prey, the remaining prey are faster and smarter, and so they lose their advantage almost immediately. So it's not like a ping pong tournament. It doesn't go back and forth like this. It may drift a little bit around its initial position, but the selection on both predator and prey is essentially simultaneous. The stronger the selection on the prey, the more the predators will have trouble getting food, because the better prey are left over. So it's not like a ping pong contest. It's more like arm wrestling, where you got two very evenly matched opponents. None of them can move the other very much because they're applying the same force at the same time. Yes, there's an immediacy of cause and effect. Dwayne came up with a not bad way of thinking about it. So yeah, sometimes in fact, you do see a change in the isocline position, but mostly we don't see that at all. Mostly it just drifts very slightly because the strength of the competing selective pressures is about equal, and it changes simultaneously. Okay, do we have any other questions on this? Somebody up in the chat? Well, yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so Sarah just said she was here. Okay, do we have other questions? Exploitation is a lot. It's a lot to take in. We're not done with it, right? We have parasites and we have herbivores, which are a kind of parasite that we'll talk about in detail before we move on. If somebody using the bathroom while on Zoom, boy, it's a strange noise.
I think you're able to like mute everyone.
You know, I am. And I think that if I can figure out how to do it, which I haven't actually had to do before. Here. Well, okay. I'm not hearing a lot of noise now, but. Well, so my question to you is, do you have any more questions about exploitation before we quit? All right, we will formally talk about parasites on Monday. And that will be an important turning point in the course because, of course, we are all here either in class or on Zoom because of a parasite. Oh dear. And we'll see how that ecological thinking influences the way that we behave when we deal with parasites. All right, everybody at home, I'm going to say goodbye. If you are in today's lab, you owe me the lab from 2 weeks ago today. So bring it or send it, one or the other.